Okay. If I were to make a Pharaoh guide, what would be the key bits to include? Okay, so I don't think I actually answered this one, so we'll stop here or start here. Yeah, so we'll start here. Okay. The key bits for Farah is obviously the slight off angle. Right? Because the thing with Farah is that like a lot of things people play her that because she has you know, a lot of good direct damage that you just want to be like spamming the enemy tank line, and that's fine, but you always want to be utilizing your off angles. Like the key thing is like any hero that's been gifted mobility, whether that's through flying or wall climb or, you know, anything, is you want that you get that mobility and you need to be utilizing that mobility. In other words, if I'm standing behind my like their Orisa shield and I'm just pelting behind my Orisa shield the entire time, then I'm not really, why am I playing Farah? Why not play a hero that maybe like a Bastion or something like that? Farah needs to be flying because it allows her to open up and play slight off angles that other heroes cannot. It's the same thing, the same argument like Genji and wall climb, Hanzo and wall climb. It opens up angles, more aggressive angles that allow them to do more damage. That's why you use off angles, because it allows you to do more damage. If you're just shooting Rhine shield as Farah, then you're messing up. You need to be shooting positioned in a way to where you can shoot just behind Rhine shield, where you can actually hit direct damage, but also if you're flying up and behind, your directs will splash and hit Rhine and back, you know, on BAP and Diva and Mei, you know, and all the anything that's behind, right? So Farah generally at the top level plays very aggressive a lot of the time. Mid-fight, but I wouldn't worry as much about that right now. I just definitely take aggressive angles. Cover is super important. Very, very important for Farah as opposed to other DPS heroes, because you can fly literally wherever you want. It opens up you to play wherever you want. So it oftentimes is a trap where people will play aggressive, but aggressive in bad spaces and wide out in the open when the enemy team has a hit scan or something that can shoot you, right? So you need to be utilizing cover. Play anywhere that has cover. Use your concussive mind for concussive blast for disruption. So concussive blast is all about displacing and disruption, booping somebody off of high ground who wants to be there, pushing the enemy Rhine into your team when he doesn't want to be there. The Orisa shield's broken. Use concussive blast to put her out in the open, but she doesn't want to be out in the open. She doesn't have her shield. So anything that you can do to put the enemy team in a position where they don't want to be, that's your concussive blast. Now, it's impossible for me to go more in detail here because I would literally have to go down the list. Genji, when he doesn't have deflect, Tracer, you usually don't concussive blast a Tracer, but like, you know, a Sombra, Booper in, you know, out of here. Like literally, you can just go down the list of every single hero and when you and how you'd concussive blast them. It's so micro oriented that I don't have time to here. But just think about displacement and what do you want to do that would annoy the enemy player. That and mobility on your own. So that provides mobility for you to go more aggressive. It's also like a Zarya personal bubble where you can use personal bubble to play aggressive. So you can use your Zarya bubble to get in, or you can play aggressive from the get-go and then use concussive blast to get out. In other words, you can use concussive blast to boot yourself into an aggressive position, or you can just go to aggressive position, shoot. Oh no, they're shooting me. I conk out. So that obviously the hovering. I'm completely out of the loop about the micro with hovering, but it's mostly, I assume it's mostly the same about balancing your fuel management, making sure that you release your fuel and then jump jet up so that your fuel actually starts to recharge. Utilizing high ground for sure is very strong to already get you on a high starting point. And then the last little thing is like when you play with Mercy, when you don't. Like when you play with Mercy, it means that you can play a little bit more aggressive and go for more aggressive positions. When you don't play with a Mercy, you generally have to take a little bit more conservative angles where your other supports can heal you. But yeah, we're getting a little bit in detail here, but those are the big ones. She's a pretty tricky hero to play. She's very simple, but there's so many little minutia. It's like a Reaper, right? The hero plays exactly the same, but it's knowing all the hiding spots, knowing all the hero interactions, and that's where the details come in. I should be reacting with a question mark. Yeah, I should. That's actually a really good point. Actually, I'll just do this because it's easy. Do you think Major Midget knows what the word hypothetically means? Absolutely not. Cager doesn't know jack. My team struggles with teams that who have one pro level DPS player on the other team, and that team plays to keep them alive at all costs. That pocket DPS using usually Farah or McGree. McGree. Might be hard to answer without seeing our team play, but any advice how to deal with that team that plays around one DPS player? We played at 3.8 4K level. What I would do is this is going to be a little bit of a cop out, but I really think it's the best answer permanently, is to think, what are our strengths as a team? What compositions do we really like? What compositions are we really good at? What compositions do we play? And then how can we play like that around a very aggressive Farah? In other words, if you guys are a really good dive team, okay, how do you beat a Farah with the dive team? How do you beat a McCree as a dive team? In terms of how to, if the enemy team is constantly changing compositions and you're always having to deal with the DPS, the player on a different hero, there isn't a lot that you can do outside of just simply scout, know where that individual is. I mean, there really isn't a lot. If they're putting all the resources in the individual, you need to be beating them elsewhere. You need to either go, guys, let's just burn him anyway, or ignore him and kill the rest of the enemy team. But that's, you don't need me to tell you that. Like that, you should already know that. So there is no life hack. There's just no life hack. You know, how do you beat a basketball team who has one really domineering player? Well, you either play your game and just be the better team. You can double or triple him. I mean, there's really no way that you could just shut down a Farah or McCree necessarily. If it was like a Widow, maybe there'd be more options, or like a Tracer, you could play compositions that are very hard to play that into. Like maybe on a Farah, you could play maps that are more open, that make it harder for him to do that. If he's a really good McCree, but maybe not a great Widow, you could again play more open maps where you guys can abuse like snipers. But it's not an easy question to answer. Do I do live scrim coaching? No, I do not. Because I find live scrim coaching to be remarkably boring. If you're doing it right anyway. It's remarkably boring for viewers. Because it just comes down to just reminding of details, fine-tuning here and there, asking questions. It's nothing exciting at all. Hello, Spilo. What's your PRs and the 3 big lifts? It's been a while. It's been a couple years since I've done this, like 2 years since I like actually went hard with the lifts. I work out just as much, if not more, than I've done before, but not as much with like the Olympic lifts. With bench, I think it's 275 or 270, maybe more. I might have hit 280, but I can't remember. With back squat, it was, I think, 355, I believe. And this is, by the way, more than breaking parallel. I'm always very, very particular about my back squat, which is why it's significantly lower in terms of weight. Most people my size would be like, oh, if you lift that much, you should have a 400 back squat, but they barely hit parallel, right? So I'm very particular. No belt, no nothing. Just the bar and me. Deadlift, I think 415. Again, a little bit on the lighter side, but that's not a lift that I did a lot or cared much about. Would you like to try to do an analysis with the one mentioned here? I'm gonna go out and compare Al games to Contenders games, see which lows to play. That would be interesting, comparing Contenders level of execution versus Overwatch League level of execution. It's kind of funny because simultaneously the gap between Contenders and Overwatch League is bigger than people think, but also smaller than people think. Overwatch League teams, it's like the good Contenders teams are actually like pretty good, but then like, for example, with London, we just never scrimmed Contenders teams because there weren't any Contenders teams that would compete with us. American Tornado was pretty good against us, but even then they were always not prioritized as much as other Overwatch League teams. And EU was also like, even BH, who was like the best team in EU Contenders, at least right now, or was. We tried to avoid scrimming them as well because the scrims just weren't the same. But that being said, the individuals in Contenders teams are often quite good, and there have been times in the past very frequently where Contenders teams have been better than numerous Overwatch League teams. American Tornado at many times in the past has been significantly better than other Overwatch League teams, especially I would say probably about a year ago, even leading into the winter when Overwatch League teams were finishing up and or starting again. American Tornado was probably beating most, if not all, Overwatch League teams, but that significantly tapers off as the season goes along. So like, and I say that in terms of like the execution, the level of play, there's a definite gap, but it's actually surprisingly inconsistent in terms of execution. Like Contenders teams will do better than you think against Overwatch League teams at certain times of the year, and then later in the year, like there's, oh yeah, London, I bet they scrim nothing but like Contenders teams. No, we almost never scrimmed Contenders. But that was later in the season as teams are, like as we've gotten like a little bit cleaner with our execution. Old Hurricane could compete at mid-hour. Yeah, I would say last year's Overwatch League, last year's British Hurricane, the team that competed with American Tornado and the Gauntlet would have beaten many Overwatch League teams. How do Overwatch League teams scrim? Round robin? You just contact, hey, do you have a scrim block open at this time? Great, we book it. Obviously, everybody's always looking for the most challenging or the most competitive scrim that you can get. I always try to take high ground and take and create space as a tank. That feels like my team never uses the space I create. I'm only a plat player, so I know I'm doing lots of wrong, but what's the point of high ground and lower ranks if your team never uses it? Should I just do brawl where the enemy tanks are lower ranks? Or should I use voice chat once on my teams to stay up top and shoot there? You can use voice chat to encourage them. But what I would do is I would always ask yourself the question, oh, I'm taking space, I'm holding space. Yes, but does your team want to play around that space? Is your team actively playing around that space? If your team is not even bothering to go to high ground, then you getting them and trying to pursue them and command them to go to high ground might not be super valuable. You're right. So what the key thing here is, and I have this with supports all the time. Oh, this is a good position for me to play. Yeah, but your tanks are over there. So can you go find a good position that's somewhere over there? Your goal as a tank is to go, okay, what is, like, I want to play here, but my team is playing over there. So I'm going to find a good position around over there. My team wants to go this way, so I'm going to help them go that way. How do you guys think I feel when I go out into quick play when I'm playing with my wife and the average, MMR is like, low diamond, high plat, right? It's not great. Like, it's kind of painful sometimes. I'm like, we should be doing this. We shouldn't be doing that. Right.
Once
oh my gosh,
again,
guys.
Thank you so much and hope I had a good English for our viewers.
Dude, chill out. Holy smokes. Neko is like one of these like Crown Prince of Paris or something. You guys don't have those things. Thank you so much. Yeah, your English was fine. It was more than fine. I've never had a problem with that at all. You were totally fine. Thank you so much, man. You're ridiculously generous. But yeah, my answer would be to pay more attention to what your team seems to want to do and play around that. And then communicate. If you are going to use voice, instead of microing and telling them what to do, tell them what you are going to do and see if they play around it. If they don't, okay, fine, you can adjust. But tell them what you're going to do. If you say, guys, I'm going to hold high ground for you. Guys, I'm going to clear this high ground. Guys, I'm going to pressure the enemy backline now. You're giving them information that they can use. Now, they won't always use it, but you give them more of the information. I'd say main tank is probably one of the most important people to be using voice chat. I don't normally, not a huge proponent of voice chat, but if you're main tank, it's a lot harder if you're not using it. Did we get a scrim against some of the top teams like Dallas, Atlanta? We didn't scrim Atlanta almost at all. Atlanta, we had some issues booking with Atlanta. They were about as inconsistent with some of their scheduling as they were with let's put it this way, the vibe that you get from the Atlanta team isn't just how they play the game, it's how they do a lot of other things as well. Let's put it that way. But we scrim Dallas all the time, at least once or twice a week. Yeah, but we scrimmed against them a lot. Like there were the thing was like there was a time when we were rolling Dallas in scrims for a period of time. Everybody goes through cycles like that. The problem with us is that we were not rolling as hard as we could have been or should have been in scrims. And then also when we got to the official, we were not good enough team to keep with nerves. Dallas was a lot more composed. People bring up scrim bucks because it really is the only measure to tell whether a team is bad or good until you get to the official matches. But unfortunately, being skillful in scrims doesn't always mean that you're a good player. Having the knowledge and the skill set of being able to perform well in officials does make you a good player. So I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, we were way better than you guys think we were. I mean, we were in scrims, but if it doesn't carry over into an official over and over and over and over again, sorry, we just weren't good enough. So, I mean, that is a factor of how good of a player you are or how good of a team you are. And we made improvements on that, but we weren't good enough. Like, I can promise you that if the Vancouver Titans, for example, that match had been played in scrims, it would have been a 5-0 if we'd played that many maps. Oh dear, am I lagging? Yeah, okay, we're good. It would have been a 5-0 if it had been in scrims. But Vancouver, clearly, we're better at composure than we were in terms of the official pressure. So it was closer than it should have been. So credit to them. The tricky thing is that kind of coaching is a lot harder, and it's something that have more experience with than most coaches, I would say. But if you get put into a situation where the players aren't very good at it, it takes a lot of work to work at that. And I was not able to do a good enough job fast enough to make enough improvements on that, and I will take responsibility for that. Yeah. So, use your voice to tell people what you're doing. And play more around where your team seems to be wanting to play. But I guarantee you, if you were impartial about how you're playing tank, you would see that there are other errors that are holding you back besides just the fact that your team doesn't seem to want to play around you. There's always more than that. So I would definitely recommend looking at that. How do you improve somebody's scrim to match consistency? Mental performance coaching, mock officials, training under pressure, having individuals in the team that are good at keeping people calm, that set a good example, experience, confidence. Those were all things that we were weak at. I mean, very inexperienced, very unconfident, scared. Not a lot of individuals that were able to step up when we needed to in terms of like leadership. And our training wasn't as good, clearly wasn't good enough for that. So it's just frustrating as a coach because you see like, oh my gosh, dude. Am I gonna have to name like my firstborn son after you guys? Thank you so much, Neko. Yeah, that's what mock officials are. Neko, Danny to impress, Crater, Will, Molinary, Straw Guy, High School, CJ, Melroth, Marquis, Flaco, Sunset, Nelano, Fausti, Blue, Fourier, Vitunder P, Giamonta, Yarvin, and Blase. Thank you guys for the gifted. Congratulations on this. But yeah, I mean, like the thing is, like we just didn't train enough. The coaches worked hard, but working hard doesn't always provide a response. Like we didn't do a good enough job. So it is what it is. What advice schedule would you give to someone who's currently mid-masters trying to grind a collegiate over the summer? Can work on scheduling things out for yourself, not super strict, but try and increase your level of strictness with your schedule. So if you're just randomly playing games whenever right now, try and build a little bit of a schedule. I'm going to play 3 hours a day, and I'm going to try and look for a review once or twice a week. The key thing is that like when you're starting something, starting to work or improve at something, you're not going to be able to jump from like level A to level Z or level 1 to level 100, right? Instantly. You're going to have to kind of one step at a time. So wherever you are right now in terms of training, whether that's how much ranked you play, your warm-up, how much sleep that you're getting, your hero pool, all the things that you guys have heard me say a million times. Your goal needs to be, you need to be 5% better than what you're doing right now over the next 2 or 3 weeks. That's the goal. And then when you get there, next goal, 5% more, 5% more, 5% more. And it's going to get hard, and you might taper off into a little bit, Wiro. Chat Jacob Clifton, yeah. But your goal needs to be, you need to be 5 or 10% better than you are right now. And I know this is very late answer to this question. But the thing is like people look at these goals, like whether it's losing weight or getting stronger or a job or improving a skill, and they're like, they set unrealistic goals and these unrealistic expectations when all you really need to do to get great at something is be slightly better every week. I'm talking about like slightly better, because a 1% change in 1 week is it's just exponential, right? Oh, hydrate, thank you. That's the goal. Thank you again for the gifted subs, man. So generous. Yeah, mid-masters is also a solid rank for some college programs as well. Yeah, I know a lot of collegiate programs that are more diamond plat area. So if I mean, even Baggins coaches a team that's probably like low masters, mid high diamond on average. So you would be solidly competitive. Yeah, again, if you guys don't know the sound alert is me in open division years ago, hammer killing a tracer. It's old clip back when I first started streaming. Should teams value a bit more the all confirmed players in? If we take Linkser, for example, he isn't stellar, but he's a confirmed player. Should he be more valuable than a similar rookie? Okay, so this is a really good question. So you're saying that with experience being a factor in terms of how you deal with officials, a player like Linkser, who's more experienced, might be a little better. And I'd agree with that. I think Linkser is somebody that probably is probably a little more settled, or is more likely to be more settled than a newer player in the situation. But the problem is there's a dichotomy, right? There's benefits and there's drawbacks. And I would say the drawbacks of veterans are usually greater than the benefits. And it's not because their mechanics get worse or that they get washed. It's because the nature of esports, at least right now, is very intense, very hard work, very stressful. The work environments aren't always perfect. And I don't mean work environments in like, I mean, like there's not a lot of experience and science behind the way some teams train, so it's not always super sustainable. And they don't get paid a lot. Now, I'm not saying they're underpaid necessarily. I'm not really sure how much money these Overwatch League teams are making or how much they're spending and how much, like a lot of like right now, from what I know is like esports, Overwatch League at least isn't a really big money making scheme for a lot of teams, right? So I wouldn't even go as far to say that they're underpaid. They're paid more than enough to make a living off of and put some savings. But when you compare that to, for example, professional sports, when you get to that top tier, you're paid a remarkable amount of money. And so what a lot of players are realizing is that I have to put in blood, sweat, and tears and stress, and I get criticized and abused almost like on social media, whatever, which is something that these esports athletes use a lot, for pay that is good. But if I went to school and I got, an internship and I got this and my dad knows somebody, or I have a cousin who's doing this, I could probably make more in a couple years than what I'm doing right now. And it's long term. A lot of players are like, what's the point? And a lot of players also are like, I don't enjoy playing the game as much as I did back in the day. So there's a lot less motivation to climb. So that's what being washed to me means. It doesn't mean that you don't have the skill. It means you don't have the motivation. And so therefore you don't have the skill. And that's why in Overwatch League, which is a relatively low paying, at least compared to real life, I don't know other esports, relatively lower paying, but very demanding. That's why a lot of players don't stick around. So I hope that makes sense. It's a really good question because it was brought up because somebody, Smex, retired. You guys might remember Smex from Overwatch League. I coached him a little bit with X Oblivion. A great player, great guy. But he's done. He's doing something else now. I'm not sure if he'll announce that or if he'll say something, but he's not involved in Overwatch right now. So, he's doing something that is probably going to be easier almost than Overwatch League schedule and pay more. So, yeah, it is sad. But that's just how the way it goes. To me, I'm not planning on being esports permanently. I'm definitely not a video game type of guy. But the reason I'm still in it is because I see this as right now an active challenge, and I'm learning a lot about coaching and leadership and things like that. It's not my favorite thing in the world. I have a lot of other interests as well, but I see it as a very appealing challenge right now that I'm going to learn a lot long term. So I'm grateful for my opportunity. And I have a good time working with London. So I'm gonna enjoy my time here and learn as much as I can. Yes, Cody, you are my favorite thing in the world. Okay. Do you think human ego is an underrated tool for success? I mean, yes. Like, I feel like I watched a video or read something about this. Like, you want to have confidence, but not enough ego. So, like, the reason why ego can be bad isn't just because you come off like a jackass or a turd, which I think is a problem. Like, even if it doesn't inhibit your success, I don't want to be an unpleasant person. That's not what I believe in, right? That's not what my convictions have. That being said, an ego or drive. I have an ego. Everybody does. You want to be the best. You want to be better. You think that you have some sort of confidence. Now, where ego can trip you up is where it prevents you from taking or pursuing feedback. For example, if I thought I was already the greatest Overwatch League coach and I couldn't get any better, then that would be ego. And that would be bad because I would stop getting better as a coach, because I would stop being self-reflective, self-critical, taking criticisms, reevaluating things, because I would already be the best there does. I don't need to be any better. And that goes for anybody in any situation. Ego can prevent you, if you get out of control, from being self-critical and getting better, which is ultimately what gets you better. Yeah, that's what I've heard as well, Get Deluxe. Yeah. So that's why it's important to have ego, is to take that, to believe that I can do this, but I can do this only if I'm, critical of myself and I allow feedback and I work hard. Amari, is she meowing? Can you guys hear her? I think she wants to EAT. I'm gonna take a quick break and feed her, like 2 seconds. Amari, you wanna eat? Amari, eat. There she comes. Give me 1 second. Eat. Come here. Okay, give me 1 second, we'll get right back into it. There actually wasn't as many questions as I thought. There's a ton of questions, but there's not like overwhelming number of questions, which is nice. Yeah, she's a good girl. So Pepper got a really good idea and got like a moving water fountain for like a pet fountain where like the water's constantly moving. I don't know why I need these earbuds. I don't need these earbuds anymore. And dude, she drinks so much water now. The last couple of months, she loves that thing. Highly recommended. Okay. What's the thought process in picking which DPS to play with double shield and contenders? A lot of it is just what are the strongest DPS to play. Like, whether it was Echo or when Genji got buffed or Hanzo has been relatively strong. A lot of it is just like, what are the strongest DPS? Tracer's been consistently played because Tracer's what prevents teams from going BAP Zen. And if you play like double poke, but like you end up like, it's basically just like if one team goes Tracer and the other team's on BAP Zen, it's very hard. So that's why Tracer's played a lot. It's not because, she's amazing in double shield. She is amazing, but also because you prevent them from playing BAP Zen. Having somebody that combos well with pulls as well is great. So like strong poke DPS, things like pulse bombs, stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, Hanzo, Tracer, those are all fine. And you just pick a DPS that is a shorter sightline on the shorter sightline maps. Like some teams will play double shield with a Mei because it's a short sightline map, and Mei walls will get a lot of value, and Blizzards will get a lot of value. But a lot of it depends on the hero pool that your DPS have, and really what are strong DPS at the time. Now, sometimes the DPS are weird. Sometimes you'll see like a Torb, right? And you'd see a Torb probably because you anticipate they're probably going to play Tracer here, or they might play Dive, or you might see a McCree with double shield because you expect that they might play Pharmacy. So there's always a reasoning behind like maybe what the enemy team plays, maybe on the map. But yeah, there's some insight. Yeah, exactly. Backbone, exactly. Yeah, she's like a Norwegian forest cat or something. They love water apparently. Any Hanzo tips? Yes. Take good angles. Utilize your wall climb to get better angles. And try and not just throw your Stormbow on enemy shields. Use them to win duels, use them to actually pressure or kill tanks. I think Stormbow on like a Rhine shield, for example, is mostly a waste usually, but a Rissa shield, Winston bubble, that's okay. And don't just use Sonic brainlessly. Think about your Sonic. Think about your Sonic. That's all I have to say, really. Like, you guys know how to use Sonic, but you need to be thinking about it. Aim for head. Yes, thank you, Backbone. Feel free not to answer. Any rookie in the Spitfire in particular you believe has great potential? I mean, Sparker, obviously. Sparker is very hard worker, good attitude, is a pleasure to coach. I mean, he's just consistent. So, Sparker is great. Is there a separate Contenders viewer that has replays of the Contenders matches? No, sadly. No, there's no way to look at the Contenders matches unless you were actually playing in them. You might be able to get like a replay code from one of the players, but I'm not for the match, but I'm not sure. Backbone might have more info on that, but I'm pretty sure I'm correct. How was my time at OWL? Any positive, negative, surprises, impressions? So I talked a lot about this in my streams already over like the last couple months, because I think I streamed twice during the season. It was okay. I knew going into this it was going to be very difficult. And to be honest, I would not have traded my experience for anything else, any other team. As fun as it would have been to be with a really good team, championship team, I would not have gotten near as much out of it learning wise. And remember, that's why I'm here. I want to learn. I want to get better as a coach. I don't want to feel like, oh, I just joined a team and I coasted to a playoff finish. Like, that's no fun. I want to learn. I want to feel like I had an impact. And even with, the season not going as well as I would have liked, I felt like I had impact. Maybe not as much impact. And there's a lot of things I want to do better next season. But, I felt like I had impact. And I did, and there were a lot of positives. Like, I got along. I liked a lot of the players. I liked working with the staff. And Nuki is obviously a good GM. I really like working with her. So I don't have anything really negative to say outside of just the results, right? So, like, it's frustrating, but I wanted it to be a not fully positive experience, because I purposely was like, it's my only opportunity, but also it's good that this is the opportunity that I have. Amari! No! She's scratching something. Come here! Hey! Come here! Come here! Come here! What are you doing? Come here. Come here. Okay. What does a pro player daily routine look like? A lot of it depends on the pro player. There's actually a surprising amount of variety, but I can give you like a baseline. There's going to be scrims. There's going to be team review, right? That they're going to be part of. And there's going to be ranked, usually a couple hours a day. Then the rest is just completely depends on the players. Some players self-review, some players don't. Some players play a lot of ranked, some players don't. Some players will hang out with each other. Some players will, watch anime or YouTube or, movies or exercise. There's a huge variety in the daily routine, but all of them play at least a little bit of ranked. All of them joining in with team reviews and so on. Okay. Hypothetically speaking, if I were to make a Junkrat guy with big cubes. Oh no, midget, you're killing me. Okay. Similarly to Pharah, you want to be able to take angles that allow you to hit as many people as you possibly can. So like the thing with a lot of the other DPS series is you take angles to like look for picks or pressures on squishies and anyone. But with Junkrat Pharah, it's like you just want to hit as many people as possible. So there's really two ways of playing it. You're either going for like angles to maximize your spam. So like you're going to be spamming from down a choke, but you're spamming down a choke from a slight angle that might get behind Rhine Shield and hit a lot of people, right? Or you're going for assassination. So I'm gonna do assass and then abbreviate because I'm not running ass. Okay, assass. And you do that by taking these these little flanks and looking for two taps, or hiding here, or conking in from an angle and then two tapping and then getting out or whatever. Or you might be like, for example, it might be like team 1, team 2. You swing to the right just behind shield, you lob a grenade and throw a conk in there and you get a pick, right? And you might not be able to stay here for long, but you do it for brief bursts. So it's very similar to other heroes. You take angles whenever you can, but with Junkrat, you might, because you're more of a closer range hero, you might not be able to stay there for very long. You might swing wide, go boom, boom, look for a 2-tap, and then go back behind shield. Think about your trap. Don't just place it AFK. Like, very similar to Sonic Arrow, this ability gets abused a lot by just not thinking. I won't go into the details of how to use it, but you need to be thinking about how to use it versus the situation, versus the enemy composition. Let's see here. High ground, all those different things are good. The one other thing I'll say about Junkrat as well is his ultimate. You want to try and use it mid-fight if possible. Don't try and use it too early, because it significantly lowers the value that your team can get out of it, because it's easier to break, because the enemy team has no distractions, because they're all like looking for your ultimate, and also makes it so that your team doesn't get a full team fight win. In other words, if team 1 and team 2 again are here, and like let's say they're a mile away, if I ult here, not only does this Riptide have an increased chance of being broken, but also means that the enemy team can just kind of chill and AFK, and even if I get, like, let's say 1 kill out of this, my team can't follow up and kill the rest of the enemy team. They're too far away. So what I want to try and do is I want to see the gap closed. Either the enemy team attacks us or we attack the enemy team, and then I tire. Because then, even if the tire doesn't get full value, I know that it's scaring a lot of people mid-fight, which is, you're just causing chaos in mid-fight. And if it does kill people, then I know my team will be able to finish and get the rest of the kills. So there's more ult charge, there's more time wasted, and so on. That being said, obviously, if it's mid-fight, you do have to understand that you are at a slightly higher risk of dying. So you have to kind of be smart about how you position yourself. Okay. I'm not going to go in a lot more details than that. I think that's a good enough baseline for the hero. The hero is pretty simple. It's a hero like Reaper, like Farah, pretty simple, pretty basic. Just some of the details are a little tricky. Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, I don't think me, but Focus Widow, Moira, Focus Widow. Any tips on counting Widow as Moira? I mean, unironically, Damage Orb, if she's on a solo angle by herself, like on a high ground or something like that, and they don't have like ranged healers, like let's say they've got like a Zen or a Merc, if they have like Moira Lucio and they have a Widow, if you Damage Orb the Widow on an angle, she's gonna have to run and go get health back. That's gonna be really, really annoying. I mean, that's probably it. Like, I could see a world where you could get some value versus Widow as Moira, but yeah. Memes, I guess. Overwatch League, we've seen a bunch of different comps of Brig, Bat, Moira, Rush comps, such as Tor, Reaper, Rendiva. Brig is usually played versus Winston, Ball Dive comps, yes. But does Brig not defeat the person having, say, a Reinhardt in the comp? What's all you're playing what looks like Rush with no Lucio? So you're just playing anti-dive. You're just playing anti-dive. That's all there is to it. Now, the question is more about, like, why am I playing Rhine in anti-dive? The reason why you're playing Rhine in anti-dive, in other words, you're playing, we don't want to die to Ball, Zen, we don't want to die to Ana Brig, is because sometimes Orisa is actually kind of squishy versus dive variants. And let me explain. When Orisa shield breaks, Discord becomes kind of scary, right? When Orisa shield breaks, nade is kind of scary. And when you're playing Orisa anti-dive, sometimes your Orisa just is hard to protect. It's hard to protect. And as well as, I would unironically a lot of the time take Earth Shatter over Bongo versus dive comps, because when dive comps dive, the Bongo gets broken like that usually. Whereas Earth Shatter, solo shatter on a ball, Monkey Bubble breaks shatter, countering Primal Rage if you can shatter Diva, the backline gets too aggressive, there's more value out of shatter, as well as just simple Ryan Hammer doing 85 damage. That actually can hurt dive tanks fairly well. So Ryan's not really an anti-dive hero, but the way these comps are played in terms of like kind of clumping up and taking like solo DPS angles, Ryan is generally more survivable more often than Orisa and has a slightly more valuable ultimate. But it's more of a map specific thing, but that kind of explains the Ryan. It's not at all playing where your Ryan goes in and swings. It's more along the lines of you're punishing their dive, and Ryan just is a little better at that than Orisa in some circumstances. Good question though. Mock Overwatch leagues, and typically deal with players in the Diamonds or Grandmaster. I've noticed that my ability to scout certain roles is better than others. Scouting one of my weaker roles is relevant to my current situation. I'd like to ask, what should I look for when scouting for a flex support player? Okay. communication on setting up their plays is a big one. In other words, I'm looking for nade here. I want to, calling, like I want to push with trance here. I want to window this. I want to hold this position, as in, like, these flex supports don't have to be chatty, but they need to call the few things that are important. They need to call them, like the nades. I've got a nade here, got a nade, right? Or I want a window here, or I want a position here, as in, like, all those things are really important. Outside of that, it's just, there's nothing special about flex supports compared to other heroes. Like, good cooldown usage, good positioning. I think a certain amount of aggression with flex support is always helpful because, like, even if to the extent of they die maybe slightly more, but if they're getting good value out of nades and they're popping offense, and like, I would rather have a slightly more aggressive flex support player than a slightly more defensive. But yeah, that's a really, really tough question. If you're struggling with one role more than the other, I would get outside help, a peer, another coach, and be like, basically, like, I suck at scouting these guys. Like, what do you think is the problem? And then you guys could look over the VODs together. Maybe you have a misunderstanding of like how important defensive positioning is. Maybe you think maybe you have a tendency to prefer slightly safer flex support players when that's not necessarily better. Maybe you have a misunderstanding of how nade value is, or how a positioning, maybe it's just really just comes down to a couple of details that you're kind of zoning in on incorrectly or too much. But yeah, that's a tough question. But I would definitely talk about, make sure that they have players that communicate around stuff that they want to do. Don't have to, again, not chatty, not loud, not shot collared, but I want, like, calling those things is really important. What do good comms look like in ranked? I'm a plat healer, plat tank. I was just wondering if I can contribute a little more in chat. Okay. Baggins, are you here? Okay, Baggins is here. So Baggins, you're asking for like with a coaching bite series? Okay. Here's your coaching bite, all right? I was actually thinking about making a video on this. We'll do it now. What do good comms look like in ranked? There are two things that you need to call in ranked. Only two. The two most important things that you can call in ranked, regardless of role, regardless of situation, is what you are doing and when you are doing it. And if you call those two things and nothing else, you've done 90% of the most important thing. Now, scouting is important. You could get value out of ult tracking, I'm sure, in ranked. Asking for help, those are all good things. Making plans, all those kind of things, like big picture plans. But really, if I'm a main tank and I say, guys, I'm looking to dive backline, 3, 2, 1, go. Guys, I'm looking for a nade. I'm gonna nano you monkey and then nade. Ready, go. I'm taking angle left side. I'm gonna high noon from behind. And nooning. That's literally 90% of ranked comms right there. If you just call those two things, that's 90% of what you need to call, because this gives your idea an idea of like what we're actually doing, and can give guidance with positioning as well. In other words, if I'm a Reinhardt and I'm calling that, guys, I'm literally bubble me, I'm pinning in, right? That tells the rest of my team what the plan is, at least as a whole, and that gives my Ana information. I'm going to save nade and nade when my Rein pins in, because I know I can get value out of that. And I'm going to position very aggressively because my Rein's going to be taking all the heat from me. You kind of see that? You see how like you're helping your Ana know how to position by telling her what you're doing. And vice versa. If my Zen says, I want to go high ground here, and says goes high ground, and I want to spam from high ground, well, now as an Orisa, you know kind of like what you want to play around, right? So you can have your positioning in your overall plan can come as a result of knowing what you're doing, okay? And then the win part, I mean, this is obviously everyone's going to know where this one's going. This is the timing, right? So you know exactly when we need to be doing stuff. If I'm Tracer and I know exactly when my monkey is jumping or pressuring, even if he's not diving, if he's just tickling the Rein shield, I know when that's a window for me to pressure from my flank. So you talk about the most important aspects of Overwatch, the planning, the positioning, the timing. Well, all of those can stem from just simply making these 2 calls and making them consistently. Now, you don't have, and to be very clear, this is not shot calling necessarily. You're not saying what you want your team to do. Everybody follow me, I know the way. No, this is just, guys, this is what I'm doing, okay? And if your team doesn't help you, unlucky. You should double check to make sure that your team could help you. So obviously that's important. And it's not like this is going to fix all of your problems in ranked, but if you were to just make sure that 2 things were called correctly, you want to know what you were doing and when you were doing it. And if you do this consistently, you don't require discourse, you don't require conversation, you don't require people calling stuff for you. You're calling what I'm going to do. You guys can come along if you want. Thinking anybody that can consistently call this. I mean, yes, again, this is not going to all of a sudden make your ranked experience perfect, and nor does this cover every single detail that theoretically could be called. But this, if you were to only call 2 things, it would be what you were doing and when you were doing it, as any hero. Even if you're a Moira, who has like some of the least playmaking potential of any hero in the game at most ranks. Just simply saying, guys, I want to push with Cole here, 3, 2, 1, go. There you go. Pushing with Cole is something that you need to call. Or Ryan, I'm pocketing you. You know? That kind of stuff goes a long way. You at least give people the opportunity to make a play around what you want to do. And there you go. Very, very important. Good question. How does honest positioning change based on different heroes? Widow, Hanzo, Genji, Tracer, Ball, Monkey, Pharah, Reaper, Doom. And how does my positioning change based on more general things like whether the enemy is playing dive, spam, brawl? How does it change based on what the comp my team is playing? Okay, so you have just accurately pointed out that there is an endless number of details, that you have to consider when you're considering positioning. So my answer is I'll give you a couple of little things. I will say against sniper comps, shorter sightlines. Dive comps, I wouldn't, longer sightlines as long as you're not completely isolated is often good. Like for example, if that monkey can't reach you just by jumping directly at you, that's great. Doomfist, tracking where he is, never being surprised. Knowing your individual hero interactions. Obviously, cover is important with all of these. I don't care if it's a Widow or Tracer. Just as important to have cover in your Tracer as it is with Widow. Playing with dive, maybe you can play more around distance and playing around your Brig. Spam, play more on cover. If you're playing with Brawl, maybe you're going to play in your Lucio aura and maybe have a little less cover and a little closer. But the point being is that you have already recognized that it's tricky and difficult. And I'm going to tell you what I told Neko in the review earlier. You probably already know how to position against most of those heroes and most of those situations. But you're probably struggling to position in ranked. So what you need to do is think about your positioning in ranked. If you understand why being out in the open versus Widow is bad, or why playing by yourself completely against Ball is bad, as Zen, for example, or why cover is good, then that's all you need. Now you just need to stay on your case and go figure it out. You need to treat every single team fight as a problem that needs to be solved. You're asking a question that you already know the answer to. It depends dramatically. You need to be able to, it's impossible for me to establish a set of guidelines outside of use cover, which is just ubiquitous, and tell you all the details. Do you want a chart? Do you want a chart? That's not going to help you get better. You can't possibly okay, how do I position? Okay, they're in a situation where, okay, hang on. Oh, the team fight's starting. They've got Reaper Doom, so I need to be further away. Oh, but they got an ultimate. How are you supposed to make those reads in the middle of a team fight? Off of a chart. You just need to practice making these calls and practice making these decisions on the fly. And then go back and self-review. Oh no, I thought about this, but I forgot about that. So I need to be keeping one more. And again, remember the whole 5% rule that I was just talking about with the person that wanted to go collegiate? Same thing. Be 5% better at reading the situation and making good decisions. Give me a second, chat. My laptop's almost dead. I need a stool. Give me 1 second. I have to plug up my laptop and the cords over here. Hey, Shotty. Cannot believe I just said that in the stream. Okay, 2 questions if that's okay. No! How do professional off-tank players grapple with multiple threats at the same time, considering how punishing missed cooldown timing is? So you have to prioritize. I had one of those situations, definitely like with a one-on-one with Molf. We just kind of have to prioritize what do you think is the most important thing right now. You know, an Ana without nade is no longer a priority. A Sombra on your backline is definitely a priority. A Tracer with Pulse is a priority. You know, a Pharmacy on top of your team is a priority, but a Pharmacy across the map might not be. A Tracer without Pulse might not be. A Sombra that's standing in her own backline or on a very conservative angle might not be. So the reason that make things that make like off-tank difficult, especially something like a Diva, is being able to read and make those decisions as quickly as you can. And practice, you know, a Tracer with Pulse, you know, Ana with nade, you can probably get an idea of when she's going to nade, and then once you've dealt with it, you no longer have to deal with it. So it's about prioritizing and then knocking them out one at a time. Sombra backline, get rid of her. Ana nade, ate it. Now I deal with Tracer, and then you go from there. And that's why it can be a little tricky. But you can't deal with everything at once. That's the key thing, is to understand that and then find out what the most important thing is in the situation. What's the proper way to scout for a main support player? They're generally very difficult to trial scrims. I like mechanics and mouths. Mechanics and mouths. Being smart and positioning well and all those things are good too. But like if you're good with movement and you can click heads with Lucio and you can hit your whip shots as Brig and you communicate well, you're a good ult tracker, you call your intentions well. Same thing as flex support. You don't have to be chatty Cathy, but you do the things well, then there you go. So like there's a lot of questions about like proper way to scout. When I scout, I look for attitude, I look for mechanics, and I look for work ethic. Even the communicational stuff you can fix, but it is very helpful to know that they do communicate the basic things well. Hydrate. I got a little more. I'm running out of water. But there's no light. Unfortunately, there are no hacks for scouting. There's no like quick fixes or quick little things. It's not easy. I'm far from a complete expert at it either. Is the old avoided combat ball with Tracer Pharmacy Lucio still useful when playing the game today? It's still fine. It could still work. I think as teams have gotten better at playing against it and had a little bit of practice, it's not as good. But it's still okay on like Koths or maps where there's a lot of boops, because every single hero basically in that comp has a boop. Yeah, it's okay. The problem with the avoided comp is that it demands you to have a remarkable ball, a remarkable Pharah, and then a flex support or that can play Lucio decently. You don't need your Lucio to be popping off, but he can't be a waste of space. He needs to be actually doing damage and helping people out. So it's unique compositional demands of having an elite ball Pharah and a decent flex support that can play Lucio is weird, and most teams can't play it. And because it's not like a dominating composition, most teams don't play it. It really was just a comp that was pretty good, a little bit unorthodox, played by people that were really good at those heroes.